Hail, you cool listeners and podcast fanatics. Thanks for coming back to another episode of Uncle Jay's Lounge. It is your favorite uncle. And today, Julian and I will be talking about all things social media and relationships, whether it comes to the people that you follow on Instagram and like their pictures and the addictive side of that, and also the relationships that we build on the more romantic side. So we'll be talking about OnlyFans as an empire and how it's affecting us today in a 2021 landscape. Before we do that, I want to check in with my co-host, Julian. How's it going, my man?
Long-time listener, second-time host. Happy to be here. I think today's topics are very exciting and on point. And also, as we record this, it's somewhere around the 1 year of the big pandemic beginning and how things have transitioned. And both of these topics have definitely peaked during these quarantines and pandemics. So I'm really looking forward to getting down and hanging out in the lounge.
Well said. So to kind of just jump into it, man, why do you think something like OnlyFans that now kind of blossomed from something that was quite quiet in the mid 2010s, and I believe it started in 2016 or so, is a force to be reckoned with, and now kind of like the sexy gig economy in a way?
The gig economy, to your point, especially the sexy gig economy that it is now with DoorDash, Uber Eats, OnlyFans, Twitch, online streaming of any nature, has become very easy to access. And I think a lot of people who lost jobs and saw the money that some individuals were making on this platform, they thought it would be best to enter these areas. And OnlyFans, in this example, has made it so easy for someone to sign up, create an account, and create the content that they'd like with very little restrictions on what you can do. And a lot of people, I think, have this nature within themselves that we've seen on OnlyFans to promote themselves in a very safe place without any potential harm in the type of content that is typically being produced and associated with OnlyFans. But my main question is OnlyFans purpose strictly for that type of content, or is OnlyFans, in the grand scheme of things, more of a hosting site or a YouTube-esque site behind a paywall?
Interesting take you had there, especially because there's kind of now competing forces, because OnlyFans is OnlyFans, but before, the natural force was kind of like premium Snapchats that people would be going about trying to do. Or now even Twitter kind of has something similar where it has a subscriber for people that you can follow, or at least it's piloting it and talking about it. And essentially you can see like exclusive content if you're subscribed to somebody. So we see a lot of people kind of biting, whether they're kind of originating it in their own natural way or kind of imitating it, the OnlyFans model in a lot of ways. But I think it is somewhat of the Uberization of human bodies. And even more specifically, I think it's more about relationships, right? Like you have kind of a contractor of work. So in this particular case, it's sex workers, and they sell a good and they distribute that good over a platform that charges them a fee to do that, and then people to interact with them. So it's kind of like a really new and innovative thing wrapped up in the same old thing as far as them providing a service of connecting two groups of people that then kind of spur on to have their own ecosystem.
So one of the questions that's popped into my mind while you're speaking there is, if a friend of yours wanted to create an OnlyFans account and produce content, from your perspective, what advice would you give an individual who is starting to produce content on OnlyFans or a platform like that?
Honestly, I don't have any problem with people doing OnlyFans. Like, I don't care. If you're creative about it, it can like absolutely change your life, and it has for a lot of people. The thing that I would think about, or like, mention, is that through research and looking up data points and things of that nature, the game is a lot more cutthroat than some might think, especially since, most accounts take home less than $450 per month, and that's after commission. And then the most common amount of revenue that producers make is $0, and then the second most common value is 5. So it's not just 100% automatically amazing money straight off the bat. In most cases, it's kind of like any really, really competitive market with a lot of players in the game. You either got to be lucky or really skilled or talented to get to that spot where you're making really amazing money. So I would just say, think about it realistically. Like, what are you trying to do? What do you want to get done in the market and so on? But what about you? How would you approach that?
I think you hit the nail on the head. From my perspective, I'm pretty neutral. If that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. I think the one piece of advice, and you kind of touched on it, was like you have to make sure that going into this platform, if you're going to be doing provocative content, that this is your plan A and you're thinking of options on how to grow and scale and create a future for it, because there is that small potential of people who are trying, oh, I'm going to try this for a month, and then they aren't seeing any return, or maybe they saw $15 or $20 and then they stop, and then that content is out there forever. And then you run into that potential problem, which is another controversial area where, an example in the US, a mom and her son were kicked out of a Catholic school because some of the fathers of other students found her content on OnlyFans. And so the question you ask there is, why is she being kicked out if other parents at the school were also on the site paying for that service? Because that's how you see the content. You have to pay to see it. And so I think in the bigger picture of things, and as you touched on it, the grand disparity between the top producers who are actually making in the large amounts you're saying, and then the average user who's not really making that much money, you really have to be committed. And I think that asks that bigger question about, should this also impact someone's future if they tried this for 6 months and it didn't work out, and then a company that they tried to apply for in 2 years found out about this content? That is the question that I always wonder about. Is there a balance there?
I'm glad you brought that up, man, because I feel like that's the most interesting part about things like OnlyFans is the number one, it's clear, anybody with half a brain could realize that it's not about naked bodies, because you can get those for free with the internet. They're obviously selling a relationship there. And I think that that's obviously the really lucrative part, if you can make connections with fans and people. And that's something that's interesting in other places as well. Now, to your point, as far as like how that can actually affect and damage people's relationships, I kind of want to, before even getting there, I want to address the fact, well, I think, to be honest, I think that if it's a private school, they can do whatever they want. Number one, I'm going to give them the right to do that. Is it fair to do? Probably not. But being that if you are trying to, I'm going to play the devil's advocate here, because I think that she absolutely has a right to do everything legally to kind of provide for her family and all of that good stuff. But if it's a private Catholic school, then they need to uphold let's say the Bible, the biblical morality that they have to produce and grow into these kids. So I could see that also being, something that could be damaging to the rest of the school body for sure. And as far as, I don't think that the people reporting it should be in trouble at all. One, off the bat of being a narc isn't that cool, but, other than that, my man, honestly, who cares? But my question to you is, do you think that any sort of discrimination for these people is okay? One, and what would you say in that particular case? And also, to bring that up, I think it was kind of, if you research the story a little bit more, the mom does like a petty move and then donates like $100,000 to, or like $250,000 to like some charity, saying she has too much money. Obviously, that's a flex because she's hurting and kind of embarrassed for her kid. And obviously, this woman makes a lot of money, like, hundreds of thousands of dollars a month off this site. But before we get into a whole bunch of other stuff, man, what is your reaction to that? And should these women, who is absolutely fine, and I think it's appropriate to call them sex workers in a very legal way, is there any ramification, do you think, or should there be anything tied to what they do as a job?
No. What OnlyFans has done as a platform is created a much safer environment for those individuals seeking that type of work, especially when you compare it to maybe the adult entertainment industry, where based on the article that you sent over, we'll put it in the show notes too, but essentially OnlyFans is cutting out the middleman. So you're actually getting paid rather than making commission, and you're not working in these very harmful adult sets that are happening. And I think for those individuals who are making the content on that platform, at the end of the day, it's really up to you. It's really up to that person. I don't think if you're qualified for a job and you exceed those requirements, I don't think you have to be hired. I don't think you deserve to be right away dismissed. I think it has to take some consideration on the company. Like you had mentioned with the private school, if they're private and that doesn't reflect their image, then they have the right to. I hadn't thought about that. And in regards to a company, I think it's the same thing. It depends on the scale of the situation, who it is, if it's going to make others uncomfortable. It's unfortunate, but that's kind of the societal norm that's happening. But I do believe it shouldn't be on the case that strictly for past work or past jobs or entrepreneurial efforts, I think in those cases, they should consideration the requirements in the culture fit or the work fit more so than that past work is. Because if you're going to hire someone who's less qualified and it's going to make your teams or your company's work less efficient, or it isn't going to bring anything into the table, that's some consideration you may have to have.
Something that we didn't even bring up too is that as far as, their pay goes, hazard pay is economically built into their pay usually. So of course you have people on the low ends, and like I said, there's a bunch of people. So the most common number as far as people making money is $0. So there's a lot of people that aren't making a lot of money, but they're also probably not getting a lot of eyes on them. When you actually kind of make it successfully in something like OnlyFans, you're actually getting paid not only for the content that you create and the relationships that you maintain, but also the risk of what you look like to the society and the community. That's just built into the economic model, because people that are too averse to that as far as what it would look like for their family, the ecosystem that they're around, wouldn't get involved in that. So that kind of etches up the price a little bit. So there's things that kind of, there's checks and balances in this that naturally occur. As far as them getting judged, I think you're right on the money. If somebody can do the job, then that's great, and they should do the job. It seems like a very capitalistic way of going about it, but I think it's probably the most efficient and right way. My question to you, man, is to kind of switch gears a little bit. Why do you think something like OnlyFans has been so dynamic in the past few years?
Maybe an amalgamation of things, especially in this past year. I believe, one, I guess for the foundation, how does OnlyFans work? If you're a potential creator, you want to create an account, you make an account, you utilize your name, or maybe use a pseudonym, or maybe not your name, and you start creating this content. And then individuals find your content and sign up on a monthly fee, whether it's $3 a month, $5, $20. There's these different tiers. And then they're paying monthly for exclusive access to whatever content is being created. And not all of the content of OnlyFans is related to adult entertainment. There are some celebrities who are using it just for behind the scenes Patreon type things, but it's this unique subscription service. But I do think in 2020, 2021, it's been so dynamic because the ease to diversify as a user what you're looking for, and you feel like you're part of a community, you feel like you're exclusive, you may be getting these interactions that are driving, if you have low self-esteem, it's making individuals feel better about themselves. Maybe it's an interest that they have that they're going for, and they're requesting these special actions or videos or whatever it is. Individuals can now just essentially say $5, this is what I'm interested in, I'm getting exclusive content. As in the past, there's no way you were ever going to be able to do that. And then the third element, I think, is the news cycle itself was so much free advertising for OnlyFans. The people who average America has no clue what this is or that it exists. But then as soon as news articles pick up that these content creators are buying, large houses. They're making X amount of money. They're buying these cars. They're seeing this crazy revenue growth. OnlyFans is reporting some numbers. Then people start more and more are just interested in the site itself and the acts they're trying out, and then find out it's stick. And OnlyFans has done what a lot of social media companies in the past have struggled with, is OnlyFans has been pretty hands off of what the content on there is, because people are paying for that service and they're kind of leaving it up to the creator to create those goods, creating an environment where people don't feel restricted or censored in any regards on the platform.
It does, in a sense, build, well, it has to, well, I was going to say it has to regulate and modulate to a point, right? So for all of you that have been kind of following along to this OnlyFans journey in some sort of aspect, that I believe it's Bella Thorne. She made a grip, bro, in a week, like $1 million in a week. And the big thing is that people felt cheated and upset because they were promised something and then they weren't given, so they paid and flooded in and they weren't given that. Number one, too, I want to say that it's really weird that this girl that came up off of Disney and being kind of like Disney's kind of a kids network and stuff like that, all of a sudden she's like the biggest thing to hit the market as far as selling your body in pictures and stuff like that. So I find that kind of funny. But the main thing that was the huge issue there was the whole fact that she was promising nudes and stuff like that, but wasn't delivering on that. So good for her for leveraging her fan base, but then she abused it in the end by making promises that she wasn't going to ever follow through on and things of that nature. So up to that point, as far as she gets an OnlyFans, people are super hyped. But then the second she doesn't deliver, I feel like, well, and obviously OnlyFans adjusted their pay scale and now people are getting paid monthly instead of instantly and stuff like that. So don't finesse a large amount of people, especially, dude, like lonely guys. I feel like that's kind of punching down, which I'm a fan of comedy, so that's totally cool. But in certain circumstances, but I think we know what happens when incels get raged.
Overall, I think the platform itself lends to where society in itself is going. I think there's more things happening online. Some people criticize OnlyFans for the type of content it's being utilized for, in the same way that people criticize what YouTube live streaming or Twitch live streaming has turned into as well, where some people are like, oh, they're just playing video games and people are paying to watch people play video games. It's all kind of the same at this point, but I think a lot of people are looking for this easier gratification and moving away from the platforms and cable and what may not be offered on major streaming services to this more natural, organic content that feels more like to some people, a friendship or a relationship, as you get to know this person over time, as opposed to like a highly polished, produced piece of content that ends up on TV. And I wouldn't be surprised if in the future more and more of that begins to happen. People are seeking more connection in a digital environment than they are in the real world.
I think that this is a perfect link to what we were talking about before with non-fungible tokens. And if you guys are interested in kind of cryptocurrency and that type of stuff, listen back to episode 1. It's all about authenticity now. And it's even more so than it has been before. It's now about people kind of being somewhat organic and making those relationships and illustrating in some sort of way that they're different from others by being original. And so I think that that's what these platforms kind of help with, especially like you mentioned, Twitch and YouTube gaming and things of that nature, where you can kind of get closer to the people that you're watching and possibly idolize. And that's where this connection holds a lot of value monetarily and socially. And what do you think?
That's it right there. I think the authenticity is always going to sell, and we've always seen that. And I think people are becoming more and more connected with these digital environments to understand what's authentic and what's not. And those who are authentic are staying around for a much longer time. And, in relation to NFTs, as you touched on, it is interesting to think some of these content creators on any of these platforms could create an NFT of very exclusive content that only X amount of people have and charge a pretty penny for it, because it appears as some people on OnlyFans are giving and donating tens of thousands of dollars to these content creators, or when you're on Twitch, people are getting $1,000, $5,000 donations. People are willing to spend that money for that piece of content and to felt known. So to have that actual connection of this clip that there's only 100 of and you have one of them continues to seem more and more realistic to where individuals are moving towards and seeking. We've seen in 2020, social media engagement has gone through the roof. On-screen time has accelerated, and people are taking part in these digital experiences, looking and comparing with friends. And you can see the outrage that's happening, the value that's being placed on this digital format. And recently, Instagram was doing a test and removed its likes from photos, right? So individuals on the front end couldn't see how many likes a photo got. Why does that matter? It doesn't, because content creators on the back end are still able to see, and you and your profile, you're still able to see how many likes you got and the metrics and the views and the impressions. But on the front end, it doesn't show so-and-so with 1 million followers on top of someone with, or 1 million likes on top of someone with 10 likes. So the question I ask is, why do you think it matters that in social media, people like to see those metrics, likes, favorites, retweets, shares, whatever it may be?
Well, I think that this is actually the one kind of like the few exceptions of how we don't like things. Like this certain area is somewhere where we don't like things to be more like real life, where we won't get outside of like a standing ovation. There's not really any sort of group sentence of, oh, I like what this person's doing in this moment right away, outside of some outwardly show. But I think that the reason that people are freaking out over that feature is there's always a group aspect to social media. And I think it's just ingrained in humans. We want to be accepted by the group, and that's why there's just such an addiction to it. And removing that aspect of it actually makes your experience that has been group oriented into a singular one and removes some of that dynamicism that you would get otherwise. But in your opinion, what do you think you're actually running into when people are freaking out that they can't see the people that liked the picture, or, you know, oh my gosh, like I like this picture, but I can't see if my girlfriend liked it or something like that? Maybe I'm kind of really throwing it into a very specific direction, talking about, you know, imitating somebody who's talking about their girlfriend liking another picture. But what do you think, Jay?
Uncle Tony's gonna do a little demo.
Oh, shit.
I think what's happening, and we'll post the article below, is that there's a large study that shows people who are more attracted to social media typically are younger, lower income, typically female, maybe have low self-esteem, are the ones who are typically most often on social media with higher screen times. And I think what's happening, what people get upset about in terms of social media and likes, is not so much seeing what other people are liking. I think there's a certain value you put on yourself or as an individual if you're setting these requirements in your mind that are completely abstract, that are saying, oh, if I only have 10 likes on my photo, I'm not worth anything. If I have 100 likes, I'm worth a little bit more. If I have 1,000 followers, I'm worth more. And people are upset that other people can't directly see that their photos or their tweets are doing well. There's no bragging nature there. There's no reward system for them to say in a casual conversation, someone's like, oh, I can't believe your photo got 400 likes. You know, that's a reward to those individuals. However, I think a lot of individuals have placed the idea of fame as occurring from the numbers they're seeing on the front end, when in reality, all of these influencers who do have those numbers are building this brand, and it's not necessarily based on, you know, those likes are going to get you a certain amount, but companies nowadays are smart enough to say, okay, you have 2 million followers. Look at some of the top, you know, influencers, content creators. Wow, you have 2 million followers, but your posts are only getting 2,000 likes, which to some people, 2,000 likes is a lot. But on the business side of things, it's making it easier to see, okay, you just have a lot of followers, but they don't engage with your content. They don't really care. And I think that's why Instagram is testing that feature to make sure that the influencers and the creators that are being promoted on their platform are going to drive more money to Instagram, drive more screen time to Instagram through these top brands engaging with those influencers. But it does have that effect on those lower ages, lower income people who are more on there that are associating this value with a number on their photo to their own personal value.
Damn, man. Well, I think we just stumbled on Julian's back pocket dissertation, everybody. That was actually super interesting. So to echo it back to you, essentially what you are surmising is that there's two kind of forces here. We have Instagram itself, who is doing this purge of, or kind of restructuring of the environment to actually understand exactly who the people that they should be dealing with are. And that goes by actually removing the group function feature to see actually who likes who because they like them instead of this group phenomenon that's happening. So I think that's one thing that you mentioned. And then the second thing is that as a innocent victim of kind of an innocent bystander that sees a drunk driver and gets hit, they are actually, that whole thing is affecting people's self-image of themselves, seeing that other people aren't seeing how valuable they are in their own mind, which is directly tied to how many people like their butt pic. Am I on the right track?
You know that's right.
Hell yeah.
Originally, right, Instagram was made to share photos, and that was it. And over time, it scaled into this thing that makes people millions of dollars a year. And I think in turn, as people become more vulnerable and more accustomed to those metrics, that's how people nowadays are placing their social value or their social ranking. It's almost in scale with what I think it was China. You can correct me if I'm wrong. That was working on a system to rate their citizens, where people are associating this value with themselves because of a like on a photo, and they're posting and editing these photos to show this life that they want others to see, even though that they don't live that life. In that same regards, is the same reason why you're seeing depression rates skyrocket, is because no one was ever trained on how to use social media or how to look at it or how to take a step away. So if you are on social media and statistically you're a younger female who's in high school and you're doing all this comparison during a pretty pivotal time in your life, and you don't feel like you're living this life that someone is portraying, and you're associating, oh, they get a lot of light, so they must be rich and famous and have this great life. And you look at yourself who's like, oh, I don't have all this stuff. But in reality, maybe your life is better than that person who's posting. But social media is never going to tell that story if you're always directly comparing yourself with someone else.
Yeah, I think you said it really well there and kind of encapsulated this as a screenshot or a snapshot of the dynamics and the moving forces that are coming in contact here. I think it is, obviously, it's also built for you to be addicted to. I mean, over the past months and maybe years, we've seen how kind of under the hood through documentaries and otherwise of why this thing is so personalized to us and has it almost seems like it's us leading us to stay on there. And it's just because they, have algorithms that are designed to have us interact with these things. And I'm curious, Jay, do you think that there's what's the long-term play, man? How are they going to make money off the people that everybody likes without the group effect? Is this just kind of, denoising the variables here and saying, we know, okay, so this person likes exactly these things, so it makes it more pure as far as a marketing standpoint? Or is there something that they can do with the actual influencers and the users who are putting out the pictures? Can they make money off there, or is it just off the data side of it all?
Excellent point. And I think this wraps things into a point we talked about earlier, is authenticity. It's going to make authentic content and real content more valuable, and authentic individuals more valuable to the platform and to their audience than it is to someone who's, a little bit more superficial, that is necessarily gaming the system. It's going to allow, like I said, for Instagram, it's all about businesses and money. So if companies can easily identify individuals who have a high engagement rate, i.e., the amount of people who are engaging with their photos, if you have a million followers, 20% is a very, very high number. So, you have 200,000 people engaging, as opposed to, there's a lot of influencers, and we've all heard about before, that are trying to flex these numbers like, oh, my photo gets 10,000 likes. If you send me free products, I'll give you a shout out. In reality, where those small businesses that are affected weren't seeing any return, because someone may get 10,000 likes, but of those 10,000 likes, none of their audience is going on to buy the products that they're offering. And so Instagram is losing out on potential advertisers on their platform, this, that, and a third. And that's kind of how it scales. But I think in the grander scheme of things, Jordan, I guess I'll pose the question first. Do you think social media is inherently good or evil?
I think that this question's been asked in a lot of different ways. Do you think X, Y, or Z is evil? And I think that it always comes down to, it depends on how you use this tool. Social media is a concept and it's an idea. It's not necessarily one with characteristics and a heartbeat and everything like that. So I think that it has a high propensity to be used in damaging ways. And I think that it's being leveraged that way in a lot of circumstances. But I think for the most part, even with the addictiveness, it is something that humans aren't adept enough to use, and sophisticated enough to use in kind of healthier ways or ways of moderation. So I would say that, man, I think it's evil to the point of how you use it. How about you?
That's spot on. I don't think the platform itself is inherently evil or inherently good. I think these changes that we're seeing, based on lots of research, is they're slowly trying to combat some of the common critiques of these platforms being too addictive, sharing, misinformation and things like that, which are, definitely happening. I think to me, the bigger problem has always been, especially for our generation, right? We were like the first ones to get social media. We were on MySpace, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram when it all started to pop off. And there's never been education on what it is or how to utilize it. You're essentially giving, what is the term? You're giving a baby, a loaded gun and hoping it does all right with it. And that's, to your point, it really is on how people are utilizing it. And I think over time, these platforms are definitely getting a lot of these lawsuits, and they're working towards making things less harsh or less addictive or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, as a business, that's how they make money. The longer you're on their site, the better they're doing. And I think the real factor that's missing is there is no education for any individual on how to use Facebook, how to use Instagram, how to spot misinformation and things like that. And maybe they're starting to do that by flagging things as misinformation and all that. But that's always the question of, who are you to censor this? Who are you to do that? And it's gone so wild for so long that is the biggest problem, is like, who are you to censor this? You've let it go all this time. And why are you stepping in now? Is it because you're being politically backed? X, Y, and Z. So it'll be interesting over the next few years, decade, to see what happens with these platforms.
It'll be quite interesting. I mean, it's been an amazing ride to see the birth of these things. And now I feel like we've gone into a transitionary period where they're not new and novel and innocent anymore. And we can see some of the blemishes of the system itself and how it's particularly articulated at this point, especially with censorship, because I think that we could talk about a lot on. Now I think we'll be seeing, not late game, but maybe possibly mid game, where we'll have enough infrastructure to actually adjust to these things and know enough to actually watch them closely. And of course, government's slow, but that's kind of one of the big, heavy objects that we can do or use to move these things in different ways to kind of manage them correctly. So it'll be an interesting one to witness. Absolutely.
In the broader scale, It's a very large conversation with a lot of variables, even from where we started with talking about these online content creation platforms and hosting sites like OnlyFans to, what is realistically the difference with where social media is as they're hosting your content. Obviously, it's a bit more censored, but the internet in itself, there's a lot of things that need to be worked on or regulated, and it's just moving so fast that no one's been able to step in. And not to say, in some cases, you could say, oh, internet's terrible, but the internet's great. I mean, you have the power of the world in your pocket for the most part. Even those developing nations are getting access to the internet and educating themselves to find the next great scientist, the next great author or fighter or comedian, whatever it is. There's all these great ways to connect. It's just trying to find the way to regulate some of that information and ensure that it isn't destructing any societal norms, or it's creating these very, very strong opinions. And how did it get there and where did it start is always going to be difficult to analyze.
Yeah, man. Speaking to you guys who are listening right now, if you're a fan of this podcast, if you're a fan of OnlyFans, how about OnlyUncles? And that means subscribing to Uncle Jay's Lounge, listen to our episodes on Spotify or Google Podcasts, all of the good stuff. Thank you for listening, and we appreciate the interactions.
Damn straight. Woo! Hey, nani, nani, talking. Hey, nani, nani. Come on.
Thanks for entering the lounge today. As Jordan said, yeah, feel free to hit us up with any topics or any conversation, or just tell us we're wrong. Sometimes that's great. We appreciate you for listening, and we'll catch you next Tuesday.